The letter didn't knock. It didn't warn me. It landed on my kitchen counter like an execution notice. Final demand $350,000 in HOA fines. I read it twice. Then a third time. My coffee went cold as my pulse spiked. I'd never even been to the property yet. The HOA president's message was printed in bold, aggressive font, the kind people use when they think they already won. Pay immediately or face foreclosure, liens, and legal action. Foreclosure, on land I just inherited. Here's the part that made my stomach twist. This wasn't a small house or suburban lot. This was a 4,300-acre ranch on Lake Buchanan, Texas. A ranch I inherited from my great-uncle Ezra. A man I barely knew. A man who apparently spent his entire life quietly setting a trap. At that moment, I was just Fletcher Morrison. 42, recently divorced. Petroleum engineer. Living alone in a cramped Denver apartment that still smelled like my ex-wife's perfume and resentment. I'd been worrying about alimony, student loans, and whether I'd ever feel normal again. Then the HOA decided I owed them $350,000. The letter claimed my property, violated dozens of HOA bylaws. Unauthorized land use. Unapproved shoreline structures. Environmental noncompliance. They even included late fees. The audacity was almost impressive. At the bottom, a name was signed in perfect cursive. Vivian Blackstone. President, Lakeview Estates HOA. I googled her. Big mistake. Perfect hair. Perfect teeth. White blazer. Photos of ribbon cuttings, charity luncheons, and smiling city officials. A woman who looked like she'd never been told no in her life. The letter gave me 10 days. So instead of wiring money or calling a lawyer in panic, I booked a flight to Texas. 2 days later, I stood on a limestone ridge overlooking Lake Buchanan as the sun crawled up over the water. It was quiet. Beautiful. Massive. The lake stretched like a mirror of gold. Mesquite smoke drifted from somewhere nearby. In the distance, oil pump jacks moved in slow, steady rhythm. Thump. 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 That sound? Money. That smell? Freedom. My boots sank into gravel and red Texas dirt that, according to the documents in my backpack, belonged entirely to me. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just land. This ranch wrapped around a gated community called Lakeview Estates. A community I'd just been threatened by. I pulled out the deed maps again. The surveys. The plats filed decades ago. And there it was. Clear as daylight. The HOA didn't own my land. They were sitting on it. Every manicured lawn. Every infinity pool. Every smug McMansion with lake views? Built on parcels my great-uncle never sold. Only leased. Quietly. Legally. Under Texas law. My hands started shaking, not from fear. From anticipation. I hadn't even finished reading the fine print when I heard engines. Luxury engines. A white Mercedes G-Wagon rolled up the dirt road, followed by 2 black SUVs. The doors opened. Out stepped Vivian Blackstone. Sharp eyes. White power suit. A smile that said she was used to people backing down. She walked toward me like she already owned the ground under my feet. "Mr. Morrison," she said smoothly, not offering a handshake. "We need to discuss your outstanding balance." Behind her, 2 men in tactical-style polos folded their arms. That's when I realized something incredible. She still had no idea who actually owned this land. And she just declared war on the wrong man. Vivian didn't wait for permission. She stepped closer, heels crunching against my gravel like she was testing ownership with every step. "You've ignored multiple notices," she said, tapping her tablet. "That tells me you're either careless or insolvent." One of her men smirked. I stayed quiet. Silence makes people like her uncomfortable. "The fines will continue accruing daily," she added. "If payment isn't received, we'll file liens against your property and initiate foreclosure proceedings." She said foreclosure like it was a hobby. I finally looked up from the lake. Which property? I asked. She blinked. Just once. Then recovered. All of it, she said. Your shoreline, your access roads, your ranch? I smiled. Not wide. Not smug. Just enough. Interesting, I said. Because according to my documents, none of this land is subject to your HOA. Her jaw tightened. Oh, honey, she said, laughing softly. Everyone here is subject to us. She gestured behind her. Beyond the ridge sat Lakeview Estates, rows of pristine McMansions, docks lined like teeth along the water, patios already setting up for brunch. What you're standing on, she continued, is adjacent land. The community has rights. I pulled out the folded survey map. Does the community, I asked calmly, pay you to threaten landowners without checking county records? That's when the smile slipped. Just a crack. I unfolded the map on the hood of her G-Wagon. The wind tried to steal it. Texas didn't want this moment interrupted. These parcels, I said, pointing, were never sold. Ezra Morrison leased surface access in the 80s. 99-year terms. Renewable only with owner consent. Her eyes scanned the lines. Too fast. She didn't understand yet. The leases include residential use, I continued, but not HOA governance. No lien authority. No fines. No enforcement rights. Her voice hardened. You're mistaken. I'm not. She straightened. You'll hear from our attorneys. I already have, I replied. That made her pause. Your HOA counsel sent the demand letter, I said. Helpful guy. Included parcel IDs. Saved me hours. Her nostrils flared. One of the security guys leaned in. Ma'am. She raised a finger, silencing him. This community has existed for decades, she snapped. No one just discovers they own it. I met her stare. Ezra did, I said. He just never said anything. The wind picked up. The lake shimmered. I could see it now, panic buried under arrogance. This conversation isn't over, she said, turning sharply. You'll regret playing games. As the SUVs pulled away, I watched Lakeview Estates again. Golf carts. Dock workers. Landscapers trimming hedges they didn't own. I knelt, picked up a handful of dirt, and let it fall through my fingers. Mine. Back at the ranch house, rustic, sturdy, and older than her entire neighborhood, I opened Ezra's safe. Inside were binders. Maps. Leases. Letters. And one document stamped in red ink. Master land ownership, surface and mineral. I sat down slowly. Because if I enforced the leases, the HOA wouldn't just lose authority. They'd owe rent. Back rent. Decades of it. And Vivian Blackstone? She'd just find the landlord. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared. Because every new page I opened made my pulse hit harder. Ezra hadn't just been particular about records. He'd been meticulous to the point of obsession. Leases dating back to the 1970s. Handwritten amendments. County stamps. Renewal clauses highlighted in red pencil. Lakeview Estates wasn't a neighborhood. It was a tenant. And like most entitled tenants, they'd forgotten who owned the ground beneath their feet. At 2:17 a.m., I found the clause that changed everything. Failure to acknowledge landowner authority voids favorable lease terms. I read it 3 times. Then a 4th. If an HOA exerted control it didn't legally have, fines, liens, enforcement, the lease defaulted to market-rate land use with penalties. In Texas Hill Country? That wasn't cheap. I did the math on a legal pad. 4,300 acres. Residential density. Private lake access premiums. The number made me laugh out loud. Vivian's $350,000 demand letter? Pocket change. By sunrise I had a plan. By noon I had a team. My attorney, Sarah Caldwell, didn't blink when I slid the binders across her desk. She just leaned back slowly and said, Well, this is going to ruin someone's week. Month, I corrected. She smiled. Years. We filed 3 things before close of business. Formal notice of land ownership. Lease enforcement action. Immediate cease and desist against HOA governance on my land. Copies went to the county, the HOA board, and every homeowner. Especially Vivian. 2 days later, the retaliation started. Dump trucks blocking my access road. HOA, security, parking on easements they didn't control. Anonymous complaints to the county about oil smells, noise, wildlife disruption. Classic HOA playbook. So I escalated. We sent rent invoices. Every homeowner received one. Back rent for land use. Dock usage fees. Road maintenance surcharges. 30 years retroactive. Some bills were 6 figures. Others 7. My phone exploded. Voicemails. Threats. Panic. One message stood out. Vivian Blackstone, no introduction, voice shaking beneath fury. You can't do this. This is extortion. I called her back immediately. She answered on the first ring. You fined me for land you don't own, I said calmly. This is accounting. She started yelling. I let her. Then I said one sentence. The leases allow termination with 90 days' notice. Silence. You wouldn't, she whispered. I looked out at the lake. The pump jacks. The sunrise. Try me. 3 days later, an emergency HOA meeting was called. They held it in the clubhouse. On my land. I showed up with Sarah, a surveyor, and a deputy sheriff, purely as a witness. Vivian stood at the podium in her white suit, mascara cracking, voice too loud. This man is attempting to destabilize our community, she declared. He's exploiting technicalities. I stepped forward and laid the original deed on the table. Dated 1948. Signed. Stamped. Recorded. This isn't a technicality, I said. It's ownership. The room erupted. People shouted. Demanded refunds. Asked questions Vivian couldn't answer. Then the surveyor rolled out the map. Every lot. Every road. Every amenity. Outlined in red. All of it, mine. Vivian's hands were shaking. You're destroying lives, she hissed. I met her eyes. No, I said quietly. You did that when you tried to steal what wasn't yours. The deputy cleared his throat. And for the record, he added, this HOA has no legal authority here. That's when someone in the back asked the question that broke her. So, what happens now? I smiled. No, I said. You negotiate with your landlord. Vivian collapsed into her chair. But the real devastation? That was still coming. Negotiation didn't come first. Panic did. Within 48 hours, Lakeview Estates looked like a ghost town with money. For sale signs bloomed overnight. Contractors froze mid-job and walked. The clubhouse bar shut down, for renovations that never resumed. And Vivian? She went quiet. That silence told me everything. Because when a bully stops yelling, it's not surrender. It's plotting. Sarah warned me. She's going to look for leverage. Expect lawsuits, media pressure, maybe even politics. She wasn't wrong. Day 5, I woke up to helicopters. A local news van parked at my ranch gate. Headlines scrolling on a phone screen. Local HOA claims ranch owner holding community hostage. Vivian was on camera. Perfect hair. Perfect outrage. This man is threatening families, she said, eyes glistening. Children. Retirees. He's abusing a legal loophole. I didn't respond. Because while she was playing victim, I was filing exhibits. We submitted the forged HOA expansion permits. Emails where board members admitted they assumed ownership. Invoices showing fines collected illegally for over a decade. Then we dropped the bomb. A quiet title action. In Texas, that's a legal nuke. It forces the court to declare, once and for all, who owns what. No spin. No PR. Just facts. The judge fast-tracked it. Which terrified Vivian. That night, she showed up at my gate. No cameras. No entourage. Just her. White suit replaced by a wrinkled cardigan. Designer heels swapped for flats sinking into ranch dirt. "I'll make this go away," she said, voice tight. "Name your price." I didn't invite her in. "You already named it," I replied. $350,000. Her eyes widened. "That was enforcement. Illegal enforcement," I cut in. "Plus interest. Plus damages. Plus legal fees." She swallowed. "And if we can't pay?" I leaned closer. "Then the leases terminate." She laughed weakly. "You wouldn't evict an entire neighborhood." I pointed past her. To the oil pumps. The lake. The land stretching forever. "I don't need to," I said. "Banks will." She left without another word. The next week was carnage. Mortgage companies froze refinancing. Insurers pulled coverage pending title clarity. Property values cratered. And then, the board turned on her. Emergency vote. Closed doors. She was removed as HOA president. Scapegoated. Sacrificed. They sent a delegation to me. 5 board members. Sweating. Apologetic. "We're willing to dissolve the HOA," one said. "Return all fines. Issue public apologies." Sarah looked at me. I shook my head. "Too late." Their faces fell. "What do you want?" another asked. I slid one document across the table. A land use agreement. Fair rent. Strict boundaries. Zero governance authority. And one final clause. Personal liability for past violations remains with prior officers. They read it. Slowly. "You're offering us mercy," someone whispered. I nodded. "But not her." They signed. Vivian was sued personally within a week. Fines. Fraud. Breach of fiduciary duty. Her assets were frozen. The same woman who threatened foreclosure? Now facing it. The court hearing was scheduled. And when it ended, nothing in Lakeview Estates would ever be the same again. The courtroom didn't feel dramatic. No shouting. No gasps. Just the quiet sound of a bully finally running out of room. Vivian sat at the defense table alone. No designer suit this time. No entourage. Just a gray blazer that didn't quite fit, and hands clenched so tight her knuckles stayed white. Across the aisle? Me. Sarah. And 3 bankers who suddenly remembered exactly who owned the land beneath Lakeview Estates. The judge didn't waste time. "Ms. Blackstone," he said, flipping through a thick file, "you authorized fines, liens, and collections on properties your association did not legally control. Do you dispute that?" Vivian opened her mouth. Closed it. Her attorney tried to salvage it. "Your Honor, my client acted under the reasonable belief." The judge cut him off. "Reasonable belief does not excuse fraud." That word landed heavy. Fraud. Then came the exhibits. Emails where Vivian bragged about forcing compliance. Meeting notes discussing how to pressure owners before Morrison realizes. Bank transfers showing HOA funds routed through accounts she personally controlled. The room shifted. The judge leaned back. "Ms. Blackstone," he said calmly, "you will be held personally liable." Personally. That meant no HOA shield. No insurance escape hatch. Her house. Her cars. Her accounts. All exposed. When the ruling came down, it was brutal. Full repayment of illegal fines. Treble damages under Texas property law. Legal fees. And a referral to the state for fiduciary misconduct. Total? Just under $1.2 million. Vivian didn't cry. She just stared straight ahead like someone watching their life burn in slow motion. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed me. "Are you satisfied?" one asked. I thought about it. About the letter on my kitchen table. The threat to ruin me. The arrogance. I'm relieved, I said. There's a difference. But the story wasn't over. Because once the ruling hit public records, the dominoes fell. Homeowners sued the former board. The HOA dissolved officially within 30 days. Banks rewrote mortgages acknowledging my underlying land ownership. And then came the calls. Developers. Energy firms. Even the county. Everyone suddenly very polite. Lakeview Estates tried to survive without an HOA. Turns out, when you remove fear, the whole thing falls apart. No more fines. No more enforcement letters. No more artificial order. Just neighbors. Some grateful. Some furious. One man confronted me at the gate. "You destroyed our community," he said. I looked at him. "No," I replied. "I destroyed a scam. I could have sold the land rights. Could have cashed out for 8 figures. But I didn't. Instead, I did something no one expected. I offered long-term ground leases. Below market. Locked for 30 years. Stability. The same people who once feared foreclosure? Now had certainty. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Except Vivian. Her house hit the market 3 weeks later. Then her G-Wagon. Then silence. But the final twist? That came months later. When I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. And when I opened it, I realized this war still had one last move left. The letter smelled like cheap paper and desperation. No lawyer letterhead. No threats. Just shaky handwriting that looked like it had been written at 3 a.m. "Fletcher," it began. "Not Mr. Morrison. Not Sir. Just Fletcher." Vivian Blackstone was begging. She wrote about misunderstandings. About pressure. About how the HOA got out of hand. No apology. Just explanations dressed up as regret. Then the line that made me stop breathing. "I know something about your uncle's land that no one else does." I read it twice. 3 times. That land had already been torn apart by attorneys, surveyors, title companies, and courts. There shouldn't have been anything left to uncover. Unless. I drove out to the ranch that afternoon. The wind rolled across the hills, carrying the familiar smell of mesquite and crude oil. Pumping jacks nodded in the distance like they were watching. I sat on the tailgate and unfolded the letter again. Vivian claimed there was an unrecorded easement. One that predated Lakeview Estates. One tied to water access. If true, it could complicate everything. Not destroy it, but tangle it. I called Sarah. She didn't panic. That's why I paid her. "Meet me tomorrow," she said. "Bring the letter." By morning, we were buried in microfilm at the county records office. Old plats. Handwritten maps. Dusty books no one had opened in decades. Hours passed. Then Sarah froze. "Fletcher," she said quietly, tapping the page. There it was. A faded notation from 1971. A proposed access easement, never finalized. Never signed. Never accepted. Vivian knew that. She also knew it was worthless. Which meant the letter wasn't leverage. It was bait. Vivian wanted a meeting. Closure. Negotiation. A chance to crawl back into relevance. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I sent a reply. 1 sentence. "Have your attorney contact mine." No response. Weeks passed. Then I heard through the grapevine. Vivian had tried to shop the easement, story to developers. Claimed she had insider knowledge. Tried to sell smoke. They laughed her out of the room. That was the moment I understood something important. The HOA war wasn't just about land. It was about control. And once she lost it, she had nothing. Meanwhile, my life was changing. The ranch started feeling like home. I built a small house overlooking the lake. Nothing flashy. Just stone, wood, and quiet. I fished at sunrise. Watched storms roll in. Slept better than I had in years. The same land she tried to weaponize? It healed me. Then came the county meeting. An agenda item buried at the bottom. Rezoning request, Morrison Ranch. That's when I realized the story still wasn't finished. Because the county wanted something. And what they were asking for would force me to make a decision that would define everything. The county meeting room smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. Fold-out chairs. Nameplates printed crooked. A dozen officials pretending this was just business. The rezoning request sounded harmless on paper. Public access corridor. Environmental protection. Emergency shoreline access. All reasonable words. But I'd learned something during this war. Nothing involving land is ever simple. The county wanted a narrow strip along the lake. Technically voluntary. Politically, not. If I said no, they could push. Delay permits. Make my life noisy. If I said yes, I'd open the door to something I couldn't close. I stood up anyway. My uncle spent 40 years protecting this land, I said. He believed ownership came with responsibility, but also with limits. The room went quiet. I laid out my conditions. No public development. No docks. No commercialization. Strict conservation easement. Emergency access only. And one more thing. Lakeview Estates will contribute to maintenance. In perpetuity. A few council members blinked. They hadn't expected that. The vote passed. Unanimous. Outside, Sarah smiled. You just outplayed everyone without taking a single swing. I shook my head. No, I said. I just finished the game. Months later, the dust settled. The ranch became a protected conservation property. The oil leases continued quietly. The homeowners lived peacefully. No HOA. No fines. No tyrants. Just neighbors who finally understood where their power ended. I still get letters sometimes. People asking how I stayed calm. How I didn't go nuclear. The truth? I almost did. But real revenge isn't loud. It's permanent. And Vivian Blackstone? She moved out of state. No forwarding address. No legacy. Just a cautionary tale whispered at real estate meetings. As for me? Every morning, I walk down to the water. Boots in the dirt. Sun on the lake. Owning land doesn't make you powerful. Knowing when not to abuse it does. So if you're dealing with an HOA that thinks it owns your life, remember this. Paper beats power. Patience beats bullies. And the truth always waits its turn.